tell me about, so you were applying to East Coast business schools, and then you ended up going to UCLA, which is where you met your business partner. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And this was in 2019, 2020, just
2020.
as 2020, just as COVID was rearing its ugly head.
Yeah.
Carry on. What happened? So you were going to go to Montana for a big vacation, and then what happened?
So we decide we're both going to school. Great. Get ready to go in September, whenever school starts. Go to Montana and book an Airbnb. And I was shocked to find that even in Montana, rural Montana, 4 nights at a crappy Airbnb there was half my rent for the month in LA. And I'm a renter in LA. I have a great apartment. It takes up most of my net worth. I love it, but as a renter, I couldn't list it on a platform like Airbnb to recoup any value. And on the flip side, now I can't afford Airbnbs, which used to be the cheap, affordable option, because they're now more expensive than hotels. And obviously, a lot of that was because people were coming out of COVID, and they're coming out of being locked up, and they're at this point they were getting ready to say, like, where can we travel? Like, what can we do? And Montana, I guess, was a hot destination at that time, but I was just thinking, I became obsessed with that, of like, why is it that I can't have my most expensive asset be leveraged in any way?
Right. Okay.
So that was where the seed was planted.
So GoKommu is, I didn't think of it like this, but it's the non-Airbnb. It's like the whisper Airbnb. It's the Airbnb that's not really listed, but it's whispered. Is that right?
It's kind of, I will say this, it's going back to where Airbnb started, but with a little bit of a different tint, in that we are a social marketplace that allows anyone to share their homes with and through the people they trust. And by the way, I should just mention, I'm Bo Abrams, co-founder and CEO of GoKommu, and my co-founder is Gus Thaler, co-founder and CTO. But yeah, we built basically a social marketplace that is for primary homes, where Airbnbs now are really professionalized second and third homes that property managers, investors are listing to make as much money as humanly possible to strangers.
Well, Airbnb, you could argue Airbnb has caused the whole, it's causing people to buy more and more homes, and causing homes to be less and less affordable for everybody else.
You got it.
So how are you fixing that problem?
Yeah, so we found that a few things. First and foremost, a social marketplace, so there's no transaction fees, is already a massive sort of protection and check on the greed that has resulted in an open marketplace like Airbnb. In that, what we do at GoKommu is we allow anybody, right, to connect to their friends of friends, to groups. There's public, private groups that they can join. And the idea is, now when you're listing, you as a host have a choice about how you want to list. And both hosts and guests are seeing, like, how are they connected to each other? Who are the mutual friends, based initially on phone contacts, adding friends on GoKommu. People often list their LinkedIn's and Instagrams on their bios as well, to see, like, Ray, I'm sure you and I have multiple mutual friends. And it's a behavior that an Airbnb would never want to do, because if you find out how you're connected to somebody in a transactional marketplace, you're going to go off platform and book with that person directly, because both of you are saving money on fees and there's trust there. And so our big aha moment, and why we're different than Airbnb, and what we're solving for to protect against those communities, is to say, first off, nobody wants to be a jerk that is charging a massive amount of fees to, like, a friend of a friend. Like, not only you're not going to get booked, it's a terrible social signal. And secondly, we are saying, if you want to even list to wider networks, to friends of friends, to groups, whatever, that's where we're going to charge you a small annual fee. It's kind of, it's like a Costco business model. And for that small annual fee, we are making sure that those hosts are listing for wholesale at the maximum. So
when you say Costco model, you mean the $60 or $120, whatever the card costs you to be a member?
It's really saying we're going to charge an annual fee because travel is happening so frequently now, and people are listing and booking so frequently. But for that small annual fee, we're going to cover you with insurance. We're going to do home verification, guest verification, make sure everybody feels more protected on the fringes of those relationships when they're not just your direct friend. But from there, we are also going to make sure that people are not listing their homes for a profit. And so there's, not only data, but like other ways that we prove that people are paying that for their rent or paying that for their mortgage. And by doing that, we are essentially saying, look, you cannot buy, you cannot list multiple properties. You cannot profit off of them if you're going to list it. And that's a protection that allows a renter like me to actually list on a website like GoKommu and not on an Airbnb.
Right.
And that's the difference.
When did you launch, you guys?
Boy, we launched officially January of 2023 in the App Store. Really, that was like a public beta. August, about a year ago, was when we really started to open things up and figure out the product, and it started to start ripping.
And how's it going?
I mean, it's good and bad in that I think we have an amazing early community of users that have done over 250 trips now on Komu. We have 550 hosts globally. We've saved hosts and guests over $1 million just by booking on Komu instead of on alternative platforms. And people, they're very active on Komu because of the social dynamic of it. So we have a lot of amazing engagement and retention that I think is really key to our success.
Okay, and what's the next? So this is a bit of a rude question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Go for it.
So what could possibly go wrong, and how would it?
I mean,
how would it? And how? Hold on. And how would it go right? Like, what's your ideal scenario, and what the possible snafus that you see coming up?
Yeah.
That's really what I'm asking.
Yeah, so like stepping back, right? Again, didn't go to business school to start a company. Went to business school to make a bunch of money from working hard. But of course, when I decided to start a company, we start the hardest kind of company to start, basically a social consumer marketplace. 3 words that I would shy away from when I was a VC. And on top of that, we graduated into the worst downturn in history, or in the last 20 years. In June of 2022, when the market took a dive, is right when we got out of business school and went full-time into Komu. So immediately I will just say a million things have already gone wrong. Like, we have had to overcome a lot of things that I would say were, we've watched the bank account hit zero a few times and had to deal with it. That being said, there's first and foremost just getting that network effect to go, right? Getting to that point where you have a product where people are ultimately sharing it with their friends, and seeing the value of it over and over and over again, evangelizing it and becoming repeat users, which a lot of that we have. To really get to that point where that starts to scale organically is the goal of every startup. And that's like what we're facing right now. Like, you're dealing with something that traditionally is a little bit more of an infrequent episodic behavior. Like, our users, they travel 30% of the year. They have a huge financial problem that they're trying to solve. That's why they're on Komu. But even when they're inviting their friends, you have to say, why would you invite your friends more and more frequently? And that's what we're trying to address right now.
Right. So tell me the number of stays that you've had so far in the 11 months since you launched. Was it 200? Was it 250? Did I hear that right?
250 right now.
So you've had 250 stays. What was the average stay like? How much?
Yeah, average stay
how
was.
How much time was it,
10,
and how much did it cost?
10 days. Mostly LA and New York, and it's $90 on average flat in New York City per night.
90 per night.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And we have plenty of people also. We have a home swappers group. People swap homes. We have a pet sitters group. So when I was in New York last trip, I just got back 2 days ago.
Oh right. Okay. Sorry, I missed you.
No, it's okay. I'll be back soon. But I pet sat at a luxury building in Park Slope for free because I was watching a dog, which I loved. And then I had a friend of a friend in LA paying my rent while I was gone. So I made money by being in New York. Like,
cool.
So it's, that's kind of what we say is, like, you're listing your home for anything but a profit. And that's the opportunity that we're unlocking.
Right. So I live in a co-op. New York City co-ops are notorious for strict rules and regulations. So how would that work? How would that work in terms of, how am I going to stay within my proprietary lease, not breach my proprietary lease, and rent it to somebody? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I guess the question would be, first and foremost, how does a co-op enforce that you have, like, let's say you have a friend staying at your place while you're gone, which I'm going to guess you do, and other people have done that in your building, I'm sure, plenty of times over the last year. How does your co-op check that? How do they enforce it? And then do you think that you have a right as a tenant to have somebody in your home, even watching your plants, even just staying for free as a friend while you're gone?
Right. Okay.
And so then even in our case, we're saying, not only do you have privacy controls on who sees your place and how you're listing it, really ultimately, by not taking a transaction fee, we're just giving you a marketing tool to show you that you have all these friends and people that you're connected to all over the world that would be interested in staying at your place. And co-ops are a little bit different. I will say, like, in that, first and foremost, they're not our target users for the most part. Like, if you are in a co-op, you might be staying at a hotel for most of your trips regardless, and you might not have as much of a need. But, like, let's say you have a house sitter, right? You have a nice place and you have somebody that wants to come and watch after your plants, like you should have a right to do that. And for the most part, I'm sure if you went to your co-op board and asked, they'd be fine with it. So it is a little bit trickier with co-ops, HOAs too, but like, HOAs are sort of pseudo government organizations, in my opinion. That being said, I think a lot of this is just to say, if people just are honest, like I tell my landlord all the time, hey, I have a friend of a friend coming here. I'm going to be gone for a month. They're Venmoing me my rent. I'm not upcharging them. Like, you can see it. They're fine with that. They just, rightfully so, they don't want you getting into a co-op or, in my building, renting out and saying, I'm going to do Airbnb arbitrage and run a business under the guise of those property managers. So like a lot of it is just about being transparent. It tends to work with those boards.
Yeah, okay. I'm actually a board member too, so I'm not sure entirely how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean,
we do have people profiteering. We have historically had people profiteering, and we've had to stop them. And we still have one or two people profiteering. It's a small building. So the problem with a small building is that, people know what's going on. So, yeah.
And that's a lot of it too, by the way. I will say, like, these ordinances, for instance, in New York that pushed Airbnb out, like in LA and so on and so forth. The two things that we discovered that matter most to those ordinances and why they exist is, one, the transaction fee. Like, by having a transaction fee, you're creating commercialization, right? It becomes a business. And then number two, it was really about the integrity of the community. Like, I think you nailed it earlier in the show where you were saying, like, yeah, by the way, of course, these Airbnbs that come in, people are profiteering, people are, it's transactional, people are coming in the building and they're creating, problems for the tenants. And that is something that should be enforced. And what we're saying is, if you take this social network approach and even share that information with co-ops, share it with the property managers and the city to show, look, this is not a thing that is detrimental to the community or the co-op. It's actually empowering for people like me, for the most part, that can't afford to live in a city like New York. I mean, I just saw the stat. It was 1 in 3 of the average tech workers in New York can afford the average rent in New York right now. So you're talking about the most expensive, like the most well-paying industry, the most lucrative jobs, and 1 of 3 of essentially millennials and Gen Zers can afford the average rent right now for a 1-bedroom in New York. Like, that is insane.
It's a little brutal right now, I'll say that, because I think the vacancy rate is under 1.5%.
Right.
So when you have that, there's no room to move, right? You move out, someone will take your place, and then there's nowhere else to go. So, and that's kind of exacerbated by Airbnb. So I think it's interesting you're looking at it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you, so where did you get you mentioned your bank balance hit 0. So how have you, sorry, I will, if you say something bad, I will repeat it, don't worry. So, how have you financed so far? It sounds like you've bootstrapped a lot of it, but where did you get the money from, and what are you doing next to secure more financing?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just say this. When I was working in VC in business school, like, I talked to even the partners there, and they were like, Bo, there's no home sharing, like, market opportunity. And I could talk more, but, I won't waste more time, but I can talk more about, like, hey, I'm a smart, rational, risk averse human being. I will bet you any money I have, which I don't have much, that there will be a decacorn in that space in the next 5 to 10 years because of what's going on with Airbnb, and because of the fact that COVID changed the entire marketplace, right? Demand is unlocked. Most of us can live and work anywhere. So, we're about to graduate business. Oh, go ahead.
Just a caveat there. So most of us, meaning knowledge workers, people who work in the physical, like someone who's a janitor or a cook or whatever, somebody who deals with the physical world, they may not have the same freedom of movement as people like you and I do, because we're knowledge workers.
Totally. No, and that's the thing. And knowledge workers are that's 100 million right now of workers in the US. And I will say, I think with where things are going with AI and whatnot, I actually hope that a lot of those jobs, like janitor jobs and even like cafeteria jobs, whatever it might be, that are more physical and require that, can be replaced by things that are automated, so that people can find more of these knowledge-based jobs and actually feel that economic empowerment to go see the world, to go travel. Like, look, even before business school, I worked in finance. I loved what I learned. It was a brutal job. Working 90 to 100 hours a week so that I could have 14 days of vacation per year wasn't a life that I felt good about, living.
Who was holding the whip at that time?
Which company?
Yeah.
It was Canyon Partners. I mean, again, amazing company. Learned a lot, but it was like like anybody in finance. Like if you go to Morgan Stanley or Goldman out of undergrad or whatever, it's going to be brutal. But that's what eventually you get paid very well because it's such an intense job. It's so you learn so much. But that being said, that's the life that most of us were living, right? It was to go take a 14-day vacation once every a year as a reward for working 90 hours a week.
I'm so pleased nobody would ever employ me in New York. That's why I had to start my own business.
I think, well, yeah, look, that's another conversation, but that is all to say. Like, I think the paradigm of how we. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Do you want to push back your 12 o'clock?
I did just ping my CMO because he was going to take it anyways, and I'm like, can you just send the guy the link? So I think we're good. He'll take it as long as we're on your Zoom right now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. I've been looking at the enterprise Zoom accounts like, no, it's just too expensive. It's just crazy pricing, really. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. So, okay, let's say, how much are you charging now for a year's membership?
0. So that was
okay.
so this is why we're not bootstrapping. So this was all part of like, so sorry, I know it was a little bit tangential, but that's all to say. I'm in VC. I'm looking at companies all day long.
Yeah.
Me and Gus are doing all these tests through business school. We're thinking there's an opportunity, but we're not fully sure. Then our two biggest competitors, I won't name them, but they are out there. They go raise 8 million and 6 million respectively from some of the top VCs in the world. And this is like spring 2022. And we're like, these guys haven't even put a product really in the market yet. Like we're like neck and neck with them with what we've got. Like, we're going to go graduate business school. We're going to go raise $5 to $6 million and go crush it. And we wait a couple months, graduate business school, the market takes a massive dive, and we're like, oh shit, like there is an opportunity here, but how can we do this? We have credit card debt, we have student debt, like we're coming out of business school, like there's no money to bootstrap. So I'm off fundraising through that downturn. And it's been like a rolling fundraise, like in that period of time, it was very, very hard to clobber together the checks necessary while we're building that initial mobile app that we're trying to beat our competitors to market with. And so that's what we did. And then it just constantly became, prove this. People say there's nothing there, prove that, and raise more money and keep showing them that you're doing it and you're acting towards your goal.
So at what point
do you monetize?
I'm sorry?
At what point do you monetize and make money as a company?
No. So at what point almost, but yeah, at what point do you stop jumping through the hoops that people ask you to jump through, and you actually put your foot down and say, right, this is costing money, let's get serious and let's make a business rather than a loss-making enterprise?
Yeah.
Is that a fair question? Sorry, Bo.
It is a fair question. It's an interesting question though, too, because I will say, like, especially again, somebody that wanted to work in VC, I think it's very interesting that, like, we know the model. For instance, like, we know things like Uber and other companies, and that might have been from a different paradigm because obviously people got so burned in the crypto era and whatnot, and the proliferation of so much cash. But like, that's to say, if I'm going to make this a profit, like there are 20,000 businesses I could do right now, especially coming out of business school, that I could do, like, where I could be managing a profit generating enterprise. And I would never raise VC capital because VC capital doesn't exist for me to go create, a cash flowing business that does, 10 million in revenue a year. It exists because they want to see, can Bo go be one of those 2 companies out of the 10 we invest in that is a unicorn, and is the size of the market there? Are they the team to do it? So on and so forth. Right. And so for us, being free has been a massive, massive advantage because that social nature of what we're doing, that connectivity of what we're doing, like, it gave us early feedback. It gave us early adopters that loved us. It gave more consumer value to our customers than our competitors that were charging and monetizing early, where they have other problems. The flip side is a lot of them, people might be like, well, is there a business model there? Like, how do you know? And what we were trying to show them is all of the comps in the market that exist, including our competitors, that clearly say, hey, would you rather pay $300 a night for an Airbnb at a stranger's place that you don't know and also take the loss of your sunk rent? Or would you rather have a place that's way more affordable, way more value for you, that's say on one trip, it's like 1/5 the price, and be able to leverage your home with people that you trust instead of strangers? Right. So you save that tens of thousands, by being a repeat user.
Let me play devil's advocate, which is really my favorite role in life, devil's advocate. And so if you charge money, wouldn't that give you more credibility from the perspective of the members that you have? It's
Yeah.
like, look, they've got a little bit of skin in the game. Okay, it might only be $50 or $100, but it's still skin in the game. Right now, it's just he said, she said. Do you know what I mean?
You got it. I actually agree with you that like you want the buy-in, and there's other reasons too. Like especially when you're trying to control the network, control who sees, who sees the wider networks. You can quality control. You can, make sure you can do the verification. That being said, like to have even gotten, our payment processor, I won't name names, but like to process payment and to do some of these features that we have scoped out that we know our users want, actually requires it's a chicken and egg problem. It's you either have to have pre-existing transactions on some other payment processor that would also require that, or you need a lead venture capital fund because that's how they underwrite you. They're like, oh, cool, Sequoia's in. Like now we know these guys are credible. Now we will allow them to process these payments and handle the risk there. And so it became like, what do we do? Do we just keep them, evangelizing the free and then turning that on, or do we try to fight that and find a lead through this downturn to convince them, that we have a business model?
And to be clear, the downturn really is only in the startup arena, right? The startup, the downturn isn't everywhere. Or reading it wrong?
I mean, this might be more of like a philosophical debate for you and me with Ray
fine.
on over wine and a cigar. But like, look, I'll say this. I think the downturn is very much towards millennials and Gen Zers, and it's mostly about the older generations hoarding all of the wealth in this country. I know that most like basically all of the equity and all the enterprise value is held by mostly boomers and beyond. And look, again, there's a reason I killed myself taking the GMAT 7 times, like to try to go to the top business schools. Like if I had that GMAT score in the 80s, I would have like been considered a genius going to Harvard Business School, right? And on the flip side, it's like the competition level is so high, the ability to try to make over $120,000 a year in any of these cities is so high. And all of us are looking for solutions to that problem, to the point where it feels like we're always in an economic downturn. It doesn't matter how hard we work or what we do. That's why we're in record levels of consumer credit debt. Like that shoe's going to drop eventually. But
it's going to require a few people to kick the bucket first, but yes.
Yeah, and it's happening. And I think that it's good that they're not cutting rates and everything, but I'm just saying like that ZERP phenomenon where basically through that downturn, essentially all of the, boomers said, we're not going to let this economy tank and they're taking, Tom Brady, no offense, is taking PPP loans and I'm still in massive student and credit card debt. Like what else are we going to do but, try to find solutions to our economic problems? Like that's what GoKommu was born of.
Okay, that's an interesting worldview. I really like that, actually. I mean, I hadn't quite thought of it that way, but I can't really pick any holes in that. I mean, maybe I'm not trying hard enough, but I'll just
look. My kids are going to be complaining about us hoarding the wealth. Trust me, like it's just going to be. But I do feel that myself of like, damn, I've worked really, really hard, and I'm the brokest I've ever been, and that's just because I went to business school, and became a founder.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, debt and then no money. Yeah, so that's gonna.
But it did force learning in a way that I never thought I could. Like I've never learned so much. And that's, by the way, what I loved about finance too. It's like you're forced to learn very quickly.
Right. So how are you dealing with I mean, are you working from home? You're saying you're working from home, right?
So right now I am, I'll remove my background so you can actually see. Right now I'm in my dad's office, which is a very weird place. He's had this since I was a kid. He's an insurance broker. He works right there. I don't know really what he does. So Gus, my co-founder, when he's here, he sits at my desk right here, and this is free office space. Other than that, we do work from home, but I do think it's important to work together at this early, in these early stages. So we try to work together as much as possible.
So it's so interesting. I'll just tell you about when I founded my company in London. I worked from my dad's office and I sat opposite my partner, and it didn't end well, to be honest. We were just looking at each other every day like this, and there was no money coming in, and we're like, oh shit.
Oh, I mean, it's hard. It's so hard.
And then eventually he found a VC to buy us out. Or to buy me out more specifically. So I left the business and left it to him. And we didn't talk for a little bit, and then now we're friends again. So, but I'll bring that up because you're working from your dad's office, and that's exactly what I was doing when I started my startup.
Yeah, I mean, look, Gus and I have been through the ringer together And I think like we've had plenty of heart to hearts and like, things that we've had to deal with. But I think like when people ask, like, why are you the team to do this? Like, why are you going to win? It feels like it's that fact that we've been those scrappy dogs that have gone through that, like that uncertainty to the point where we're like, are we going to be able to grind through this because we believe in it, or are we going to go give up and try to get cushy jobs and like, move on with our lives?
So is it a 50-50 partnership, you guys?
Yeah, I thought it was very important to be 50-50 partners with
Okay,
with Gus.
that's interesting. So the guys at Atlassian, the Australian guys.
Yeah,
Have you
of
read
course.
about them?
Are they one of the ones that said do not ever do 50-50? Or are
I
they the ones
think they,
no?
No, I'm not sure. But what I remember from the stories that I read was that if it's a really difficult decision and nobody can make nobody can come to a resolution, they flip a coin.
Yeah, we have that problem too at points. But like I will say, when it comes to things like he's a full stack engineer, and he's really the CTO. Obviously, there's definitely times where he is an amazing CEO and strategic thinker, and like probably realizes he doesn't need me. That being said, he often defers to me on most things that are, I think, more relevant towards the strategy, the biz dev, the fundraising, and also like I talk to a lot of our users. So does he. When it comes to product and dev, like I defer to him. Like if he's saying, hey, this is going to cost too much, or we're not going to do this, or whatever it might be, that's his call. And I think we have to have a lot of respect for that jurisdiction. But if it's something we really disagree about, we talk about it and we figure it out, and that's management.
And so part of the reason, he's in New York, right? And you're in LA.
He's normally in LA. He's in New York just at this moment in time. We were just out there together. Yeah, we did an accelerator in New York for 4 months last year, and it's ERA. It's right next to where you are right now, and that's where we go. We work out of there when we're in New York.
Oh, okay. So did that accelerator hook you up with investors? They must have done.
I mean, we had demo day, and we got to close demo day. And this accelerator, I will say, it's like it's one of those ones that people don't hear of often. It's like a liberal arts college where you either know it or you don't. But like they have more per capita unicorns than Y Combinator. And the people that were in that accelerator with us were freaks of nature. They were all like MIT, Stanford, Harvard, whatever it might be, and they were all doing clean tech and deep tech and other things. And so we got to close demo day because we're the home sharing social network, but it was right as the Airbnb downturn like was happening in the sense of getting kicked out of New York and dealing with all of that.
Well, they're kicked out of Westminster in London as well.
Yeah,
and probably several other boroughs. I'm not sure, but I remember Westminster.
And it's like that. There's a cultural thing happening, right? We all are aware of that. Like there's a zeitgeist of Airbnb that we're all like, oh, something's happening. And so we get up there, demo day in front of thousands of investors, probably hundreds, but felt like thousands. Do our pitch, thought it went really well. And then ultimately we have our start at these booths right on the side, like right there. I can't tell you how many investors like literally went out of their way to come up to us like, I love what you're building. I totally see the need for it. I do this and it's so bad with my friends all the time. Like this makes so much sense. And they have this little sign up sheet and they're like, yeah, here, like here's my email. Like let's talk. The amount of ghosting that came after that, and by the way, you start to realize like most of them don't have the capital right now themselves because their performance is down. Like most of them just are associates too. Like they get the problem because they're young people, but they realized, oh, if I try to go pitch this to my partner, they're going to think there's no way you're going to disrupt Airbnb. Right. And so that's all to say, it didn't turn into that. It was frustrating to say that because some of our peers were raising $2 million and they just started their companies 3 or 4 months prior, and we've been going at it for 2 years and been right. Like we felt like we've been right for the last 4 years about the opportunity.
So how much juice is left in the tank, like emotionally, not just about money?
That is the name of the game, isn't it?
Yeah. So how much juice for the pair of you is left, assuming nothing changes?
We think that,
and I know that's a really tough question. I apologize.
Yeah. I'll tell you the honest truth about like where we're at with GoKommu. The consumer side is showing amazing signs of promise. Like we think we have that white hot center. The part that we're still trying to really unlock, obviously, is our like how you get to hyper growth and scale. And I think that's a combination of go-to-market product and product marketing. And you really want to do that, in my opinion, when you have your business model just totally laid out and there, because like we know we have keys to that, but we're like, we don't want to miss our shot and not monetize the 50,000 downloads that day when we decide to do that one thing that we think is going to be really amazing. That being said, I would say that if things don't start to naturally go up and to the right at a scale that we like feel the momentum and volume of it, like where you're just like, this is really, really taking off in the next few months, then we'll have a heart to heart about it. But for the most part right now, the momentum of the product fuels us. Like the momentum of the people saying, I've been waiting for this my whole life and I love this and I'm telling every friend I know about it, is what makes you think you're going to go to the next level.
You must have considered this, but GoFundMe and other platforms like that, have you thought about those?
Yeah, I mean, there's like WeFunder and there's others. I mean, I think they're all options. I will say even those, like there's a first and foremost, they're like, we need to see that you have a certain amount of traction, which I think is funny because we're like, you're a marketing channel for us to get to that traction inevitably and make our users owners of this company. But I digress. Secondly, it's like there's a negative signal with that, if I'm being honest. So a lot of VCs, if they see you go to those channels early on, when it's not part of a syndicate deal with a VC, they think, oh, these guys couldn't raise from VC. And we're like, oh, now we've got all as we've progressed to this point, when you look at our deck and everything else that we've got, we're like, here's all the answers to the things you said that you weren't going to happen to show you that you were wrong this whole time. So that's happening now. Like we did just close a VC recently, so that's been exciting. And now we're trying to finish out this round and then bring on some teammates that are not me and Gus, because I have some skills, Gus has some skills. We need a great marketer. We need a great product designer. Like we need engineering talent. These are all things that like, obviously we believe we've earned the right to bring on that Fab Five at least and get to the next level and see what we could do there once we're monetizing. Beyond that, there's another business model that we believe a lot in, that we're like, oh, if the consumer side isn't working, we have something that, like this thing up our sleeves that we think, even if that becomes what GoKommu is, we think it's a great opportunity that is also massive, and we're going to go pursue it. And that's actually selling directly to businesses. So I talked to a lot of founders coming out of business school, and I was like, hey, I thought it was going to be pretty easy to raise some money for this idea, getting absolutely crushed. What do you think I should do? And they're like, Bo, try being a Series A founder right now. Like we're getting crushed and we're in trouble and we need to cut so much expense and still hit our mark. Like and we came up with this idea where we said, hey, if one of those expenses that's really impacting you on your balance sheet is essentially, or the income statement is essentially travel for your young salespeople, let's say, or for anybody that's going to LA and New York, I said, because hotel prices are so expensive. What if they stayed with a friend in that spare room, that vacant home, that ADU in the backyard? Would you as a company pay that friend $100 cash, like as a gift for that stay? And every company was like 100%, as long as you handle liability and payment and you're saving us that difference between, a $350 hotel per night and $100 gift to a friend. And that model, I mean, we're about to pilot it, but like, it's a no-brainer because all of a sudden incentives are aligned, right? You're inviting your friends. You're saying, hey, book this on GoKommu. And once we hit this button, my company will pay $1,000 for me to crash at your place, which you probably would have done for me anyways as a friend. We get a network effect. We get revenue from whatever we disperse to hosts, and I can go sell to businesses instead of trying to, have some big boom or bust consumer social app.
That's really exciting, actually. That's really exciting. I wish you, all the best with that. So,
that gives us momentum because we're like, we don't have to die. Like we could be reborn in a way that actually could be a relief. It could be like that thing that really starts to go.
You could do both. One doesn't preclude the other, right?
Well, that's the thing. So when we look at it like, and like, this is my take. I don't know how you feel about this as an entrepreneur yourself, but I look at it at the pre-seed stage, at the seed stage, like where we're at right now. It's pricing an option, right? You're basically saying this company has, I'm going to buy equity in this company or future equity in this company at this price, with the option that if it works, it's a massive, massive win. And I just, my principle is just insane. If it doesn't work, it can go to zero. I could lose all my money. It's like the equity, and ultimately we're saying, well, look, we just handled and de-risked that option, because now if you invest at this stage, we can almost guarantee based on this model and what we're about to find out and discover that we're going to be a company that can drive 100 million in revenue if we keep selling to these different companies in that way. But it might be the thing that gives us the cash, the team, and the runway to truly go find that consumer opportunity that's $100 billion company that goes head to head with Airbnb.
So you think the B2C or C to B? I'm not sure.
B to B to C.
Yeah, B2B to C. Okay, cool. B2B to C, that is less than the B2C.
100%. And that, by the way, that's, I know how crazy that sounds. It really is, but I will say, like, I know that, for instance, on the B2B to C, it really is first and foremost selling to small to mid-sized companies. Like, it's going to get harder and harder to sell that to a Google or a McKinsey for a few reasons. One is Google already has like a home sharing network and a policy there. Like they kind of, they say,
Oh,
oh,
they
if you,
do?
yeah, if you
Oh,
stay with a Googler on a trip, like they reward you and that host for that option, instead of a hotel. But like, again, if I was working at Google, which no offense to Google, it's like I would probably take the hotel because I would rather, enjoy my trip. But small to middle-sized companies, like, they're much more that, like, the traveling people, they understand that their company might be struggling. They have equity in those companies.
yeah.
They do, they often are traveling and trying to go shake hands and close deals because it's the company's relying on it. As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, McKinsey, whatever, you don't care as much. You want the hotel points. Like, that's why I'm working in, investment banking. Give me the points. And number two is the bureaucracy is way worse. They're thinking immediately about the risk. They're like, wait, hang on, we're good. We got a Hyatt partnership. You're telling me you want our people to go stay with their friends, and that
Yeah.
if there's a fire, you've got it covered. And so it's like not even worth that sales process,
No,
where that might not become a $10 billion company,
no.
in my opinion.
So, Bo, let me just go back to the original set of questions, which I never emailed you because we didn't go through that process.
No worries.
So, okay, so 5 years from now, things have taken off. The B2B to B, the B2B to C has provided you a stepping stone to get to the B2C, and now you're looking at like mega cash, right? What are
Yeah.
you going to do next? Are you going to stick with the company, or are you going to leave and sip pina coladas on the beach, or what's your plan?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I will say, me and Gus were just having this question because I don't know. I don't really believe in the concept of retirement. It's partly why I went into business, was this feeling of like, hey, even when I'm done, like, killing myself working, maybe I sit on some nice boards and people care about the advice I have to give because of the
Mm,
experiences I have.
mm,
I believe retirement is a scary thing because you sometimes maybe lose your purpose, right? And I like to wake up every day thinking, what am I going to contribute? Like, what am I going to do? Because I don't want, I mean, as much as I love golf and pina coladas and that's almost a scarier thing than working myself all day long and feeling feeling alive and electric. So I would like to stay with the company in the long run because I believe the company actually has massive staying power. Like, it's not just this fad. It's kind of like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the one source of truth for our careers. Like, if I wanted to look up your professional history right now, I'm going to go to LinkedIn,
yeah.
and the network effect has taken hold there. I think GoKommu has that. I think GoKommu will be the one source of truth for who you share your homes with, who you trust to do that. And by the way, we also allow people to share their travels too. So, like, if you wanted to also just use us and you're going to Paris and staying at a hotel, you could be like, who's my network that lives in Paris? Who's going to be there at the same time? And
Right.
there's so much to unlock there about really making the relationship the more valuable thing,
Yeah.
about connecting in real life. So I plan to manage that vision as far as I can take it, as long as, that is turning into, obviously, also ultimately profit.
So Facebook with their marketplace have done like kind of walked into Craigslist space and taken that over. I mean, I use Facebook Marketplace more than I use Craigslist because I kind of feel that I know the people. There's a bit more. There's a bit more to grab hold of. It's not just some blank text listing. There's like, you can look up the person and whatever. Aren't they like a number one or two maybe
Threat.
threat? Yeah.
So I will say, I love that you brought up Facebook, because, like, I will say everybody always goes to Airbnb, and there's a lot of reasons why they're not the threat. It is a social network, or an Apple might be more of a threat. Facebook Marketplace was born out of Craigslist. So was Airbnb, was also born out of Craigslist. So were so many great companies. That's all to say, most people do not store their social networks on Facebook anymore, especially our target users. Like, I sometimes go to Facebook for some of these home sharing groups. We pull a lot of users from them. But if I were to click on somebody's profile and try to look at their mutual friends or whatever their job is or their schools, nobody under the age of 35 is updating any of that anymore. It's mostly social living on Instagram. professional living on LinkedIn, and then more and more people are actually using TikTok as sort of as kind of a hybrid, but in a different way. But I agree, you kind of nailed it, right? Like there's a reason why you prefer Facebook Marketplace to Craigslist, is because there's just a little bit more social proofing and human touch there.
Exactly.
And OfferUp, I also think is kind of an interesting mix too, because it's like a more of a geographic, familiarity. But that's all to say, I'm not worried about that, because those marketplaces exist for different reasons. And also most of those companies face the innovator's dilemma. Like it is why Instagram, owned by Facebook, is getting massively disrupted by China and TikTok. Like they thought they had a stranglehold on it, and then all of a sudden somebody made a better product, and they're trying to catch up with Reels. And it's like once that network starts to go, you're behind as the innovator.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about that. But I do think I'm glad that you pointed out that that's more of the threat than an Airbnb, because most people don't see that way.
Oh no, I mean it's definitely. I mean the thing that you have is the social connection. You take
Yeah.
that away, basically you don't have. Well, that's the entire essence of it. You take it away, you have nothing. So
Yeah,
social,
yeah, but that's also the one part that we're trying to nail, and like that's the hardest part. Is I don't want you, Ray, to have 1,000 followers on GoKommu. Like, and it's not a place for followers. What I really want is I want Ray to connect with his 30 to 40, maybe tops closest friends that he would share maybe his home with, or he would share his travels with. And our belief is when you need to open that up to friends of friends, or to join these groups or whatever it might be, your alumni network from college, whatever, we're there to do that. And we, that's where we will underwrite if you're doing those stays with those people. But in the meantime, to build a network that is actually going to reach billions of people, if this all works out and I'm lucky, that is a focus on saying it's about high quality connection in real life. Like we don't want you addicted to your phone. I'm like, I want Ray to go to LA and see his friends in LA and have dinner with them and travel and connect and empower that would be the greatest, I think one of the greatest purposes of my life is to make more people feel that connection to the people that they love and care about.
That's brilliant. Well, I mean, thank you, Bo Abrams, so much for joining me. And this was kind of an impromptu interview. This was going to be a pre-interview, and I just went ahead and pushed the button and turned it into a full interview. So I appreciate you rolling with the punches here on the fairness predicament.